think it's been a year and a half since I did a brand deep dive on Loro Piana, and since then, I've been getting asked when I'll be reviewing a brand that's really often mentioned in the same conversation as Loro Piana, which is, of course, Brunello Cucinelli. Now, it's taken me a while to really get a feel for this brand because it just wasn't one that I was particularly drawn to, except for their jeans, which is definitely something we'll have to address later on. But it was just never a brand that was really, it felt really close to my personality and my aesthetic. But since you guys wanted to hear my thoughts, here it is. Here is the truth about Brunello Cucinelli. I have put their bestsellers to the test. I have done my research, and this is everything you need to know about the King of Cashmere. We'll talk about their heritage, their ethos, what makes this brand special, and what makes them so loved. And I'll try to answer the big question: is Brunello Cucinelli worth the hype? Should we be spending $1,200 on their classic cashmere sweaters? And how does this brand compare to Loro Piana? If that sounds interesting to you and you'd like to hear my opinion on this brand, then make sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe down below if you haven't done so yet, and keep on watching. If you're familiar with my The Truth About series, you probably know that most brands that we have looked at so far are more heritage brands, meaning that their history goes back at least 100 years. For example, Loro Piana was founded in 1924, if I remember correctly, so they are 101 years old. And compared to these heritage brands, Brunello Cucinelli is actually a contemporary brand. Brunello Cucinelli, the brand, was founded in 1978 by Mr. Cucinelli, who is still very much around, in a small Italian village called Solomeo, where the company is still headquartered today. And even though this brand has not been around for that long, they have certainly made their mark on the fashion industry and completely transformed how and when we wear cashmere. This brand has become synonymous with uncompromising luxury, exquisite craftsmanship, and profound human values, which is not something that you often hear associated with luxury brands. I feel like when we think of luxury brands, we often think of elegance, glamour, sort of this dazzling spark of luxury, and not necessarily the fair treatment of human beings, but it is at the very heart of the Brunello Cucinelli brand, because it would be fair to say that Mr. Cucinelli came from humble beginnings. He was born in a small Italian village in 1953, and he actually grew up in a home without plumbing or electricity. His father was a factory worker who had to work soul-crushing hours to put food on the table, which instilled in him the importance of placing his employees' dignity, health, and happiness at the forefront of his business philosophy. And it's something that is still near and dear to Mr. Cucinelli's heart, who is still at the head of his company. To this day, 57% of the Brunello Cucinelli brand is controlled by the family. Family values and the importance of family is something that will come back to time and time again when it comes to the brand. And it's something that they would like their customers to feel throughout the entire experience of acquiring a Cucinelli piece. This idea of family and this intimate relationship that the company shares with their clients and with their employees is something that really makes them stand out and differentiates them. The way they treat their employees and their customers is something that is as important to the brand as is their commitment to exquisite craftsmanship. But Mr. Cucinelli not only transformed his own life, the cashmere industry, but also the life of Solomeo, this village where he came from. He completely restored the local infrastructure. He built a theater. He cleaned up abandoned warehouses and factory buildings to create his own slice of heaven. And he also created job opportunities for the local youth in a town that would have been quickly abandoned for larger cities, because these little villages and little towns really don't hold too much excitement and don't offer too many opportunities for younger generations who would have tried to seek a better life in larger cities. Instead, he not only created an environment where people have opportunities to grow in a healthy and dignified manner, but in order to foster the future generation of Italian craftspeople, he also set up a school of arts and crafts in Solomeo, and the company is still very much based there. All of their workers are given a fair wage. They are strictly forbidden to work after hours, so there is definitely no overwork. And there is also a 90-minute lunch break offered to every single person who works at the Cucinelli offices that is still based in Solomeo. So family values and again this intimate relationship with both their customers and their employees is something that is quite rare, and I think it makes this brand stand out from other luxury houses. And the reason I wanted to emphasize this so much here is because if you share similar values, it's important to know where your money is going. So it's something that the Cucinelli company has a lot of respect and commitment for. But what are they known for as a fashion house? So as I mentioned, the Brunello Cucinelli brand was actually founded in the 1970s. At the time, Mr. Cucinelli was 25 years old, and he had this vision to create a line of cashmere sweaters in some unique, bold colors exclusively for women. Not that cashmere wasn't around at the time, it was definitely a staple in most fashion conscious people wardrobe, but cashmere was predominantly available in neutral shades, so things like black, brown, and gray, and he wanted to create some more exciting shades in cashmere. And the reason he chose cashmere is because he wanted to create pieces that will last, pieces that are timeless, that you can keep in your collection, and again, here comes family values, pieces that you can pass down to your children. And he believes that with the right cashmere pieces, if you care for them, you can actually do that, which I just love that a sweater can become an heirloom piece. So this was his idea, but because he came from very humble beginnings, he really did not have the means to have a fair start. So he relied on other people's kindness and a $500 loan, which he eventually turned into a multi-billion-dollar fashion empire. But it all started with a dream and 6 cashmere sweaters, because at the very beginning he only had enough money to buy yarn that would make 6 cashmere sweaters that he ended up dyeing in some really bold, colorful shades that there was really no interest for in Italy. So his very first cashmere sweaters were actually sold in Germany and by a gentleman in Milan who became one of his mentors and one of his first investors in the company. So the company's history doesn't actually go back that long, but it's really interesting how they started. They started in an industry that was kind of stale and dull, and back then I don't think cashmere was seen as the most exciting piece in your collection, but thanks to Brunello Cucinelli, it is a staple that we all know and love now, and we find a lot of excitement in. Brunello Cucinelli was the brand that first introduced cashmere pieces in some beautiful, bold, colorful shades, and their pieces might not be the most exciting in terms of design, but they are made of the finest materials using the best techniques and best craftsmanship by people who pour their heart and soul into every single creation. And they really are experts in selecting the most unique colors and color combinations, and they fit their pieces to absolute perfection. The designs themselves might not be groundbreaking, and this is where I think you'll see the biggest difference between Brunello Cucinelli and Loro Piana. Loro Piana to me feels a lot more refined. Their pieces are a lot more fashion forward, even though they are still classic, timeless, understated pieces. Their shapes, their styles, the draping, the cuts are definitely a little bit more abstract, whereas Brunello Cucinelli definitely sticks to the basics, but they stick to it with some very unique colors, some of the best fits, and integrity. They pride themselves on the fact that their pieces encapsulate Italian values and manual skills. They believe that the beauty of their pieces is found in simplicity, in uncompromising craftsmanship, in the plushest, softest, and best quality raw materials, and how much love and care is poured into every single one of their pieces. Because when you buy a Brunello Cucinelli piece, you're not only buying a new piece of clothing, but you're also buying a piece of their heritage and region. They want you to be transported to Solomeo, where every single piece is crafted with the utmost care, which to me is really beautiful to have this sentiment in a world that can feel quite cold and almost removed. I think there are very few brands out there that balance luxury and exclusivity with this warm sense of intimacy. I think it is really quite beautiful, and what better way to show you warmth, love, and attention than by draping you in the plushest cashmere out there. Now, if you're sitting at home thinking, this sounds fascinating, it's something that really resonates with me, but this storyline sounds quite familiar. That is because the Brunello Cucinelli legacy actually inspired the latest season of Emily in Paris. If that's a show that you've seen, if you remember watching the last season of Emily in Paris, you may remember that her latest love interest came from a small Italian village, and he was at the helm, or he was about to be at the helm of his family business that specialized in crafting pieces from the best quality cashmere in incredibly small batches. Well, that storyline is actually inspired by the legacy of the Cucinelli family. And if these values resonate with you, you might want to look into the Brunello Cucinelli brand. But where should you begin? Because it can be quite overwhelming. Brunello Cucinelli has grown into a comprehensive lifestyle brand, so they not only offer ready to wear for men and women, but also for kids. They have an entire line of footwear, bags, accessories. They even have a homeware line. They have sunglasses, so it can be quite overwhelming if you're new to this house. So where should you begin? Of course, we'll talk about their classic cashmere sweaters. We couldn't make a video about Brunello Cucinelli without touching on their cashmere sweaters and what I think about them. But let me start with jeans, because surprisingly their jeans are my most favorite piece. As I told you at the beginning of this video, it wasn't a brand that I was particularly drawn to, at least not in terms of aesthetics, but their jeans, I have to say, are some of the best designer jeans out there. I am someone who used to live in spray-on skinny jeans by Saint Laurent, but at this point I don't want something so extremely tight, and I feel like Brunello Cucinelli jeans are the perfect compromise. They of course offer several different styles, but if you like a pair of jeans that are slightly more close fitting, something that is a little bit more on the slim fitted side, but they are not suffocating and not just too rock and roll looking, I think the Brunello Cucinelli skinny jeans is something you would really enjoy. They offer them every single season in a ton of different washes and colors, but they are something that I swear by. They are definitely on the pricey side, but they are incredible quality, and I don't think there is another pair of jeans out there that fits quite like Brunello Cucinelli jeans. They offer them both for men and women, as I mentioned, in several different cuts, but their skinny jeans are my favorite. And even if you're not a big fan of traditional skinny jeans, try these on, because yes, they are more closely fitted. They are not uncomfortable or unflattering in any shape or form. And while we are on the topic of trousers and pants, I also love their leisure fit trousers for men, which the only thing that's leisurely about them is the fact that the crotch is a little bit deeper, which means that you can really easily sit down in these. But they offer these trousers both for men and women. They don't have these exact same style of pants for women, but I'll tell you what to buy instead. If I can, I'll make sure to link everything in the info box for you. But they offer these trousers for men with a double pleat and a really cool sort of belt tab, which almost looks like a tiny little pocket. They do these every single season in different colors and different fabrics. For the summer, they'll usually do them in a blend of silk and linen. For full winter, they of course offer them in either wool or cashmere, and I find them incredibly flattering. If I had to pick between these and trousers from the row, I honestly think that they're quite comparable. It just really depends on what fit looks better on you, even though they're quite similar. I find that the Brunello Cucinelli ones are slightly more comfortable and the crotch tends to be a little bit longer. And it also depends on colors because the color range is of course a lot wider when it comes to Cucinelli, but they also do similar high-waisted pants with pleats for women. Sometimes they do them with a wider leg, other times they'll do them in sort of a barrel shape. I have tried this before. I personally could not make them work just because the front of the trousers is a little bit too flat for men, in my opinion, so it doesn't really work with my anatomy, but it's good to know that they're available both for men and women. And I actually like that little tab detail on the men's trousers, but they are in a similar price range. I think they are just about $1,500 for a pair of trousers, which is of course insane, but compared to the Row and Loro Piana, who offer similar styles, I think it is very much aligned. And if you're wondering, should I go for Loro Piana? Should I go for Brunello Cucinelli? I think the perfect comparison is when it comes to their classic cashmere sweaters. So the Brunello Cucinelli cashmere sweater, I think is around $1,200, whereas the classic cashmere sweater by Loro Piana is $1,500. So there is definitely quite a bit of a price difference. But when it comes to the tactile feel of these pieces, I really genuinely don't think that there is a huge difference. If I wanted to be really, really specific, maybe the Brunello Cucinelli cashmere sweaters feel a little bit lighter and a little bit more plush, whereas Loro Piana's cashmere sweater is a little bit more substantial. But at the end of the day, I think it will really come down to your preference for color, because Cucinelli sweaters tend to be available in a wider color range. They tend to be a little bit more colorful and slightly more bold. Don't think that you'll find neon colors in the Cucinelli range, but they will have different shades of blue and lighter colors, whereas Loro Piana sweaters tend to be a little bit more reserved and you'll find them in more shades of neutrals. And I think it also comes down to which brand's aesthetic you prefer. Loro Piana to me is a little bit more refined, a little bit more snobby in a way. I don't even know if that's the best word, but it's a little bit more, I don't want to use the word pretentious, but they are definitely a little bit more premium and exclusive in the way they treat their customers, in the way that the stores look and feel, whereas Brunello Cucinelli to me feels a little bit more casual and easygoing. I mean, you're still paying over $1,000 for a cashmere sweater, so don't think that it's going to be too laid back, but it feels just a little bit more effortless. So I think it will really, at the end of the day, come down to your personal preference. I really don't think there is that much of a difference between their classic cashmere sweaters. They're both incredible quality. They will both last a really, really long time. But at the end of the day, it just really comes down to what colors you like more and which brand I think fits your personal aesthetic better. But to be really honest, when it comes to their women's line, I would not suggest that you buy their classic cashmere sweater. There's nothing wrong with it. It is a fine cashmere sweater, but I actually prefer the fit of their silk and cashmere blend sweaters for women, which are slightly tighter. I actually think that when it comes to women's sweaters, I do prefer the Loro Piana cashmere sweaters over Brunello Cucinelli, but for men, they are quite comparable. The one thing that I do actually have to say about Brunello Cucinelli, thinking about it now, is that their sweaters tend to be available in a wider size range, because I think they go by Italian sizing, so you can go down to a 44 or maybe even a 42 in their cashmere sweaters, whereas Loro Piana goes from extra small to extra large or double extra large in their sweaters. Don't quote me on this, but I do think that their size range is a little bit more restricted compared to Brunello Cucinelli. But moving on to their women's line, I do prefer the silk and cashmere blend sweaters, which are slightly tighter and I do think have a more unique fit to them when it comes to knits for women. Brunello Cucinelli also does the most incredible sheer knits, which I know it sounds weird to say that there are sheer knits out there, but they do, I think, these knits that are made of a blend of mohair and wool that are genuinely almost sheer. They are so widely knit that they almost look and feel like gauze. I mean, gauze is quite rough. These are definitely a lot softer and a lot more plush, but they create the most incredible see-through transparent layering piece to have in your collection. They do sweaters, they do cardigans, they even do vests in this material, which to me is incredibly unique, and it's not something that you will see often from luxury houses, although keep in mind that it will be incredibly delicate because it almost, you know what it almost looks like? If I could rename this material, I would name it the cotton candy material because it almost looks and feels like cotton candy, but they offer a ton of these pieces, usually with a cable knit texture for women. And something that you'll notice in their women's line is that a lot of their pieces are embroidered with sequins or with little sparkly bits, which unpopular opinion, but I am not a fan of. To me, it feels just incredibly childish. You know how princess dresses or even things that you buy for girls will have sequins on them, even more classic pieces just to make them a little bit more sparkly and a little bit more girly. To me, it just makes a lot of Cucinelli pieces feel a little bit less refined and a little bit more juvenile than they should be. I definitely think that sparkly bits look great on some things, but traditional, really classic pieces are not one of them, but that's just my personal opinion. And I feel like the majority of their women's pieces will have some sparkles on them because that's sort of their signature touch. They even have shoes with sparkly bits. They tend to have these little beads on their bags and scarves too, which to me just cheapens the overall look of these pieces. But that is just going to be personal preference. If you like a little bit of sparkle, just know that Cucinelli is also a big fan of them. A range that, in my opinion, deserves a lot more love and attention is their sunglasses. I think Brunello Cucinelli started out by creating sunglasses in collaboration with Oliver's People, if you know that brand. They initially created a line of sunglasses in collaboration with that brand, but now they have their own range, which is anything but humbly priced. They are definitely up there in price as you would expect from a brand like Brunello Cucinelli, but I actually really like their sunglasses. I don't own a pair myself, but I would be open to picking up a couple of pairs. I was looking at their site just a couple of weeks ago and I came across some new sunglasses that I really like the look of. So that might be something that you want to look into. Something that does not need a shout out, however, is their shoes because their shoes are insanely popular, especially their, I think they're called the knit racers, which they offer several different styles for men and women when it comes to sneakers and boots and sandals and espadrilles and so on. Long story short, I do not really like any one of their shoes. They're just ordinary to me, but their knitted racers are quite popular, which I really don't think that if they didn't feature the Brunello Cucinelli emblem, they would be as popular as they are. But just so you know, they do make knitted sneakers, which tend to be quite popular. To me, they're slightly orthopedic looking, so they are not necessarily the brand that I would go for. When it comes to sneakers, I actually much prefer the sneakers that Loro Piana has to offer. Loro Piana also has their own version of knitted sneakers, and as you know, I am a big fan of the Newport sneakers from Loro Piana. So when it comes to shoes, Brunello Cucinelli is not one I'm a big fan of. And when it comes to their range of shoes for women, most of them are covered in sparkles because, as I said, that's sort of their signature touch. And then they also do leather goods and bags, both for men and women. I don't think there's anything really innovative or cutting edge about their bags. One that tends to be quite popular is their country bag, which is their take on a duffel bag for men, which is very often compared to the Birkin just because it features a similar twist closure to the Birkin, and it also features two sangles, which, to be really honest with you, I would actually consider for traveling because I really like the proportions of that bag for traveling, and it is half the price of a Birkin. Of course, it's still incredibly expensive, but compared to a Birkin or an HAC, it is slightly more reasonably priced. What I don't like about their bags is the type of leathers that they use. Their leathers tend to be quite shiny and quite almost vintage looking. Their leathers tend to be quite worn in, especially when it comes to their men's bags. And a lot of their pieces will feature a large Brunello Cucinelli emblem, which it's not even the size of the print, it's really the length. Brunello Cucinelli obviously is such a long name that when you have that fully printed on a bag, it can be quite overwhelming and it can almost look like a weird quote that's being printed onto a bag. If I could change something about these bags, I would probably use the Brunello Cucinelli emblem on them instead of the name being fully sort of embossed on the front of their bags. To me, it just cheapens the overall look, similar to the sequins. So their bags, in my opinion, are not the most refined, but they are of course going to be incredibly expensive because they're all handmade in Italy. And if you're looking for the best of the best, the creme de la creme, the most precious of all fibers, you are probably going to be investing in vicuña, which if you're not familiar with vicuña, I will make sure to have my video on Loro Piana linked up here, because similar to another incredibly popular quiet luxury brand, Loro Piana, Brunello Cucinelli also offers select pieces in vicuña that are available for order. They usually don't carry these pieces in store. You have to special order these pieces. They of course offer their most classic styles in vicuña, both for men and women. And in case you're interested, a classic coat will start at around $13,000, whereas a blazer for men will set you back just around $10,000 in the most precious of fibers. So if you are a true luxury connoisseur, just know that vicuña is also available by Brunello Cucinelli, but it is something that of course Loro Piana is so known and loved for, while their pieces tend to be slightly more expensive compared to Brunello Cucinelli. But again, as I said before in this video, it really comes down to your personal preference and which aesthetic you prefer. To me, Loro Piana feels a lot more refined, a lot more elevated, a lot more cutting edge and fashion forward, whereas Brunello Cucinelli tends to be a little bit more casual, a little bit more effortless and laid back, while of course offering the very best fabrics and the very best craftsmanship. But this brings me to the end of today's video on Brunello Cucinelli. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you learned something that you did not know about this brand. But if you are familiar with the brand, if you are a fan of Brunello Cucinelli, I would love to hear your thoughts and your experience in the comment section, and let me know if there are any other brands that you would like to hear my thoughts on. I really appreciate you being here and watching, and I cannot wait to see you back here with a new video really soon.